Hey, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. It's dedicated to making you a faster cyclist, the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee with our head coach, Chad Zimmerman.
All right, buddy.
Our CEO, Nate Pearson.
Hello.
And we're back finally doing a normal podcast. It's been almost a month since we've done one.
Yeah, seems
kind of crazy.
Seems like
right?
a long time.
We've
Out
been
of practice.
I know, yeah. So forgive us if we have any issues here. Producer Ian is producing the podcast, and if you have any questions about this episode, you can jump into forum.trainerroad.com. You can throw in links. Ian's going to be switching cameras and doing a lot of stuff like that all throughout this podcast. So if you hear something that we mention, something that you could do if you're listening live, which you can on Facebook or YouTube, is you can jump into the forum and you could toss in some links, for example. It'd be sweet if we had that community aspect. So we'd appreciate that. So you guys can jump in. And if all you have to do is just look for this episode, which is episode 202. We're going to get into a bunch of questions that you've submitted at trainerroad.com/podcast. But first, we need to catch up on a few things. We've posted a bunch of race analysis videos, race analysis videos and athlete interviews. The athlete interviews were with the Stan's Pivot team, which we're proud to be sponsoring them this year. We'll get into this in a bit, but they just destroyed it at the Whiskey Off-Road, which is awesome. They did really well there, the Epic Rides race. And we also had the podcast with Allison Tetrick, which was fantastic, the Queen of Kanza. She's a firecracker. It was a really fun podcast. If you haven't listened to that one, I absolutely recommend you do. So jumping back.
And Jeff Linder.
Forgive me, yeah.
NorCal
Cycling videos. If you watch his videos, you see this man knows what he's doing when it comes to sprinting. So we talked to him about that very thing. And it's interesting because a lot of the time I feel like if you talk to a sprinter in the Pro Tour, their advice would be very different than the advice you get from a person that races typical Cat 1, 2, 3 sort of stuff, you know?
And he has different recommendations based on what category you're in.
Yes.
Because your P1-2 race is a lot different than a 4-5 race.
Yep, and we talk about that very thing.
Yeah.
Good videos.
Yeah. Fantastic. So let's touch on a few things. Let's do some recaps as far as what's gone on for racing. Nate just pitched a sad face. You can't see that if you're listening to the podcast, but that's what he did.
Ebbs and flows, Nate.
That's it. That's racing. We went to Sea Otter with the intent of doing 3 races each. I was only able to do 2 because Enduro did some weird scheduling. Sea Otter, if you're listening, I really recommend that you stagger the start order of your Enduro so that a group of people start on stage 1, a separate group on stage 2, a separate group on stage 3, and then a separate on 4. And then it just round robins its way through. That would be much better because I signed up for a 9 o'clock start and I didn't start until like 1 p.m.
Oof.
So I couldn't do it. I had work and meetings and had to miss that one. But you also signed up for 3 races.
Yep.
Circuit race, crit, and road race.
Yeah.
And how many of those did you do?
Well,
I almost raced as much as you did.
a couple laps to crit.
Yeah.
So the morning of, I wasn't feeling very well, and I was just walking through our kitchen. And I've never had this happen before, but I was just walking, and I threw up out of nowhere, just on our Airbnb cupboards. Like, sorry, guys.
Not with nausea.
Not with nausea. It just went from like a little bit, but not like normal food poisoning where it's like hours, and you force yourself. And then I threw up again about 10 minutes later. I thought maybe I ate too much or something.
Common problem for Nate pre-race.
No, actually, I don't actually eat too much. I eat the right amount.
Eats enough.
But anyways, I went through the start of the crit. I just could not put out power. It was really hard. What happened, I don't think I got like food poisoning or something like that. Maybe I got some kind of virus, but I really think what happened is I got like a really bad acid reflux from what we're having. And that's where like everything was kind of high up in my esophagus.
Yeah.
And then the next day I felt kind of bad. I probably could have done the race on Sunday, but we had travel problems, the road race. So I missed the circuit, which I'm kind of glad because it was really hard. And I missed the road race. But I also rode down there and I got some like power PRs on the day before the road race.
Oh,
so it was definitely
hurts.
like I came back quick.
You didn't feel great though, even though you were able to do those power PRs, right? You still felt ugh.
Yeah. So anyways, it was very disappointing because I had really like wanted to do well at Sea Otter, and I, as you all do, you adjust your training and stuff. So
How'd you decide to pull the plug on racing?
I
Like
got
what were the
dropped.
factors?
Someone pulled your plug.
So, but why did you decide that it's best not to race the following races? Because like you said, you probably could have thrown yourself back in. But what were the factors that you were weighing that made you decide to not do that?
Yep. So the next day with the circuit race, it was because I really wasn't eating any food the day before. So I was already felt weak, and I wasn't eating any food all day long.
Because you couldn't really put food down.
Yeah. In the circuit race, if it was flat, maybe I'd try. But at Laguna Seca, it is. You did it. It was extremely hard.
Yeah.
Like I think me being at peak form, I would have got dropped because it was so intense.
It's a 6-lap race. And we'll go over this in the race analysis video that you'll see from it on my bike, but 6-lap race, and over 2 minutes, like just a little over 2 minutes of every lap is basically 500 watts up that climb.
So it would have been
pretty rough.
And this is what category?
Cat 3. Yeah. And some of those people, I swear, they were riding like size 49 bikes, just the smallest tiny humans in the world. And they had legs that were
the person
like
who,
Ninja Turtle legs on there.
The person who beat you, I've raced against him before, and he'll be Cat 2 or Cat 1 very, very soon.
He's very strong.
Yep. And he was pushing the pace. So, yeah, and then Sunday I decided on that because we had logistic things, and I was gonna miss a day with my family, and I was like, well, if I'm not prime, and that's also a very hilly road race, if it was flat, I would probably have done it.
Yeah.
So
I feel like one thing too, this wasn't like a peak event for you necessarily. It wasn't something like you really wanted to do them.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like a peak event. If it was like your peak that you were building for a long time, I'm sure you probably would have tried to stick it through, right?
So another because it was the opposite of my strengths, like hills.
Yeah.
That it made it that if I was feeling bad, it made it even harder, right? It was already going to be an all-out effort, and that. So if it was a flat race and it was a peak event, or a flat race and not an important event, I probably would have done it because you could just hide in the group and see how you feel and try to do 1 minute hard or 15 seconds hard.
Something else that I thought of with this too is that we thought of. I don't know if you remember talking about this. You were in your post sick days, but we were discussing the fact that you could try to race through this. Who knows what you were sick with at the time? We didn't know. You could try to race through it. Probably fatigue yourself a good amount, or you could kind of look at it and just go, you know what, I'm going to cut the cord and then focus on being well so then I can get back to training properly right after this, since it wasn't a high priority event.
It's a tough call. I mean, you've made all the work invested. I mean, the training's there, the travel's there, the expense of it all. So it's hard to duck out.
We're there for work though too, so
yeah.
So it's easy to justify.
Easier to say. Yeah.
Sure, refocus.
Yeah.
How'd you do?
Yeah, so I did the circuit race. We'll see that in the race analysis video. Once again, didn't do the enduro, but I did do XC. And my form's coming along. I had a good race. I got 7th in a very stacked field. I think that we had... I know for sure, I heard that we had 7, but I just know for sure that we had 3 past national champions and I think 2 or 3 current national champions because it was 30 to 39. So we had the person that aged up from the late 20s and then we had the 2 from the 30s. So really stacked field. We even had Bobby Lee, the Olympian track racer in there, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah. And I ended up 7th, which was a really good result. Sea Otter isn't a national championships field, but it's honestly not far off. It's one of the closest races you can get to it. So I'm really happy with that, considering I've still got a long way to go before July in terms of fitness. So, but a few things that I want to share on takeaways with that. So my pre-race routine, it's getting more refined, and it's really, I feel like since I took so much time off, I kind of lost that. And my body's changed, and I've had to figure out a new one. So cream of wheat has been my pre-race meal this year, and moving away from oatmeal because of Nate. Thanks, Nate. And it's been fantastic because it's very easy to prepare, low on fiber. My stomach seems to do much better with that. So that's been one thing that's helped a lot.
I threw that up, so it's not my pre-race meal anymore.
Not anymore.
No.
Yeah, okay, got it. And then the other thing was going back to my ski racing days. I used to when you pre-run a course, when you're skiing, you're just side slipping the course. You're memorizing every single aspect of it because when you ski race, if you miss a gate, you're disqualified and you're done. And it's very easy to miss a gate because you're just off by 3 inches on your line. So you have to be very precise. So when a skier is looking at their course beforehand, they are memorizing every single aspect of it. And in their mind, they're drawing the lines that they're going to hit on that course. And then they know where to be. They know the right spot to be as they go through the course. And when I pre-rode this course, I really dedicated all of my focus entirely to that. And I feel like it really helped. And I saw where I was absolutely going to go. And I felt like even after pre-riding the course just once, on race day, I felt like I knew this course like the back of my hand. It was mentally taxing to do that the whole entire pre-ride, but I feel like it was very beneficial for me.
Did you visualize it then when you got home and in bed and stuff and just think about it over and over again?
Yeah, I had my recovery boots on and I had my headphones on and I was listening to relaxing music and I was thinking exactly through the course, every single step.
Would you ever have taken a GoPro and recorded it
on
warm up and then just watch it?
It would be really helpful. And I think it would have been more helpful even on this course because it's pretty long. It wasn't like a short course. I think it probably would have been even more helpful. But it allowed me on race day to see spots where I didn't have to panic and make a last minute decision. I knew the line that I was going to take, and I knew that it was a good spot to overtake somebody.
That's so huge because I think, at least when I race, the locals, if you've done a course a whole bunch of times, you know how fast you can go through.
It's hugely advantageous.
Yeah, and when it's a blind corner, so that
makes a huge difference.
It's just nice knowing there aren't going to be any surprises too.
Yeah,
it does a lot for your confidence.
And the other thing about mountain biking is you have this this kind of ebb and flow where you go from wide trail, whether it's a dirt road or paved road or something like that, down to single track, and it just changes constantly. And there was one portion of the course where I felt like we were in single track descending for a while, which usually means I get on the back end of a person's wheel because if I'm not off the front or something. So that usually means we bunch up. And then there was a single track climb, which usually means there's going to be more collection because there will be a slower rider somewhere with others. And then one section where it widened out into kind of like a goat trail almost, but it was like just a bunch of goats made a trail. So it was pretty wide, but really steep. And I thought this is a great spot to attack because chances are you're going to be stuck behind people. So I thought of myself in that position. And once I got there on race day, I did not feel like attacking. I was very tired, but I saw it beforehand. I played it over in my head so many times. I just went for it. And it ended up, that kicked off the bridge that I was able to make to the front group that ended up being really helpful. So it was a good thing to do. And it kind of reinforces a point that I've discovered that I'm rediscovering after time trial training, which is with mountain bike racing. And I would say this is similar with criteriums. You have to be willing to throw your race away multiple times. Like what I mean by that is
put
in efforts that are so hard that you may find yourself completely blown up, engine light on, and you're just coasting.
You'd be surprised what you can rebound from too in the heat of it.
Yes.
And there are a lot of things that would shut you down in a non-race situation that you can make yourself work through in a race situation.
Absolutely. And that was one of those things where with time trials, you don't do that, right? Because time trials, you want to pace consistently. And I found that changed a lot of my mindset and it's given me a lot of benefits, but for cross-country racing, that is not beneficial. You have to be able to put down some really big bets at times that you might not be able to back up, but it could be worth it.
That's a good takeaway.
Yeah, so that was helpful. Now, the last thing that I wanted to share was some information from this. I've been wondering why my call-up points, relatively speaking, aren't that high. And you can check your call-up points. If you go to USA Cycling, you can log into your account. And I'm actually going to do this now so that I can run you through the links because it's not that intuitive. So you sign in on their website, and then once you sign in, you go to the sidebar, and there's a spot where it says Racer Links, and then you scroll all the way to the bottom, and you see a spot where if you wait for a while, your rankings will pop up. I think it calculates them there. So call-up points, and I don't know if this is the same for cyclocross. It probably is, but I don't know, so I'm not going to speak for that. I'll just say this is just for mountain biking. But if you look at the rankings and how they decide your ranking, you basically have a 3-digit number, and it's got 2 decimal points thereafter, but 3-digit number that's assigned to you. And then as you race, you bring that down, and as it goes down, if you have good results, then that's a better call-up position. More points equals a worse call-up position. You start out, and it basically takes into account the last 3 or 5 races, I believe, or the best 3 out of 5, I think, in the last races that you've done.
Sounds right, yeah.
And when you start out, if you don't have 3 races, then you start out with 600 points for basically as placeholder. So you just have to chip away at that. So the way that it works, though, is interesting. It takes into account the way you get points, or the way your points are decided, are all based off of the point values of other people you race with, which that seems pretty fair in a lot of ways, because that way, if you race against a really fast person, that's weighted for that, right? It'll take that into consideration. So I was wondering why my points weren't that high compared to a lot of folks I was seeing in the Midwest, South, even in the East Coast, that sort of thing. Particularly in Texas, I saw a bunch of stuff. And I was like, maybe they just have a ton of races. But they don't really have a ton of races. But here's the thing I did notice. And shout out to Steve Michkowski, who friend of the podcast, always present on the forum, TrainerRoad user, awesome guy. He actually looked into this a little bit deeper. There are races, and if you live in an area with this, you can take advantage and really get a lot of points. There are races where in mountain biking, they combine pros with Cat 1s and or Cat 2s, kind of like in road. Like P1-2 is normal in road, but in mountain biking, you don't hear that. Now, the interesting thing is they score them together too. So if a mountain biker that's a pro mountain biker that's good, that shows up to your race and you race him, you can get dead last. But if he's a really fast mountain biker with really good points, you are going to get a ton of point value out of that race.
And this definitely carries over to cyclocross, because every time someone like Katarina shows up at a regular race or a points garnering race, more people will come to it.
That happened in Reno. We had like a world champ, past national champ, and then someone who Justin Thomas, who's almost points up. And the race director goes, "You just start this race, you get dead last, you'll get more points than if you win any of the other races."
Oh yes, yeah. And so there are a bunch of people with a ton of points. And I remember at Mammoth at Nationals, we did the call up stuff, and there were guys that they didn't look particularly in shape. And they were from Kansas, Midwest, that sort of stuff. And they got called up to the front row. And I was like, dang, these guys must be really strong. And Kansas, and we're up at 8,000 feet. And we started, and that course funneled into single track really quickly. They started extremely hard, and then it was just like engine lights and steam blowing out the engines on single track, and we were all stuck behind them. And in my mind, I was like, how do they get these call-up points? And that's how. So if you have a race with a combined P1 field that also scores everybody together, you can get a ton of points, way more points than if you even won Sea Otter if you get dead last potentially in a race with a really fast rider, which is crazy. That's a broken part of the system for sure, but doesn't mean you can't leverage it.
Yeah.
So
it makes it gameable, which is unfortunate.
And the last bit of racing before we get into the questions, we did UNR, so a local college, our local university, they had Criterium. Yep. And we have some interesting and fun race footage from that one. Multiple cameras inside the same race. It'll be fun. You'll see that on our YouTube channel. And then also...
Do you want to see what place you got?
Because
a lot of people aren't going to see the video.
Yeah, I won.
Yeah, you won a P1-2 race. Which is pretty cool. Beat Pete.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yep.
Yeah, it was good. We'll go. It'll make for a great video. So if you haven't checked out our videos, you really should watch it. It's a pretty dynamic race. Lots of stuff going on. So. And then once again, just to shout out once again, good job to the Whiskey Off-Road athletes, to all the TrainerRoad users that did that race. The Epic Ride Series, if people don't know, that's the biggest mountain bike series really in the United States, and a ton of you do these races. So good job to all of you, John and Shelly Peachel.
Go
good
Peachels.
Job. Yep. Shelly got second place with a flat in 15 minutes.
Wow. So, yeah, it was hers to lose, and she did. She lost it on a flat tire. So fitness-wise and skill-wise, she was there.
Way to go. And then the last bit, I'm heading to a 4-day stage race this week in Utah, and we're going to have some race analysis from that too. Mountain bike stage race. So that'll be good. TT, that's the last bit of race stuff.
Well, I did a 345.
You did
35 plus race, and I won that one.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of it because I beat Jose, who's a really good local racer, and I beat Justin Thomas, who that week or previous week he had done a ramp test. He's at 5.2 watts per kilo.
Yeah.
And he has a national championship in mountain biking. So.
And this is a course with climbing on it too.
Yeah. And technical.
Nice job.
But anyways, there'll be a cool video on that too.
Yeah. We did a TT though, first TT of the year.
Jose got second in your race, and he got third in my race. So I don't know.
There we go. Yeah, I see what you're getting
Just
at.
joking.
The first time I dusted off the TT bike since state champs.
Yeah.
And my power was way better than it used to be. I think it's because I'm just a more well-rounded human now in terms of strength, mobility, everything else that I've worked on. I used to have almost like a 40% reduction in FTP from my road bike to my TT bike, and now it's 3%. So it's very close to the same. And that was doing zero training on the TT bike, just jumping on. So I did 300 watts, just under 300 watts for about 17 minutes. So pretty good. But you did the TT.
I did.
And you need to find a lucky rabbit foot at this point.
Yeah, I was going fast. I did 330, I think.
Yeah.
But that's with a 30-second stop because when I was going, so you're I haven't ridden in a year or two, and I of course changed stuff, and I tightened all my bolts, and some of the bolts were loose from a bike shop. But
you went back and tightened them.
I did
because we've learned our lesson here.
Thanks, Chad. Yeah. So have you heard this story yet, Chad?
I have.
He ruined it.
It's unfortunate.
Okay.
Well,
going through
good for all the listeners,
and right through a fast downhill, going over 30, maybe close to 40 on this part, and I hear this on the front wheel, and I think immediately I'm going to die.
Tire.
Well, I'm going to die because you get a flat tire and it goes
at 40 miles an hour.
Yeah, on the front when you're all
way
leaned
over
over.
the front.
Yeah.
I'm like looking, I stop, and it's someone's like wheel disc sticker that you would cover like the valve opening was stuck to my wheel just to a part where it was like a card, like, you know, the kid would put on their card. Go, 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 go.
On Strava, I was accused of being like Mario Kart and throwing bananas, but I was throwing stickers.
Just like the sticker didn't know where to go, and it saw Nate. It was like, ah,
right there.
Yeah, perfect. So I ripped that off, and I was like, oh, should I ask to start over? Because it was only like 3 minutes in.
Yeah.
But then I just got back on. I should have asked to start over and been like, I had a mechanical. This is the local race. It's like,
Yeah,
no
they
one-
probably would have let it go.
Yeah, I think they would have let it go too.
Yeah.
But then I finished and I got fourth, I think.
It's a good time.
Yeah, and I would have got a really good time though if I wouldn't have had that.
I think Nate would have beat me.
I don't know about that, but it would have been
close.
close.
Yeah, I got the 4th fastest time on that course, which I'm pretty impressed with.
yeah,
It was a
it's
really
It was
good
day.
condition day.
It was a good
It was
day.
a great day. It wasn't very windy, and it was fast.
To my on the backside where I didn't have the problems, where was the hilly side, you only beat me by 4 seconds.
Yep.
So I don't know, Chad.
That's also because I went out so hard. Once again, TT to mountain bike stuff. Because of mountain biking, I went out on the TT bike, and keep in mind this is the first time I didn't even do my warm up on the TT bike. I did it on the road bike and just got straight on. And I was pedaling out, and I was like, 400 watts doesn't feel too bad. And I was like, this is a problem. So I went out way too hard. Classic TT
You must have
stuff.
managed it pretty well though, because your differential between normalized and actual power, average power, were super close.
Yeah, I ended up ticking down. Yeah, it was 297, 294 on the difference. I ended up ticking down like 10 watts at a time, kind of like dropping down and then finding a spot where I felt like I could settle in. But I don't regret that at the same time, because time trial, I know that's weird. Not because I would have had a way faster time if I would have paced evenly, but in this case, it's so low priority. And in one respect, the mentality of going out hard is definitely getting ingrained into me with all this cross country.
You say you
racing.
would have had a way faster time, but I don't know. This could have been the approach. It's a short TT. You can make those errors and recover from them, or at least gut it out on a short course.
I think I lacked a lot of speed on the backside of the course.
He beat me by 4 seconds after all those hills. Like,
Yeah,
that's
I
what
should
I'm-
have
it's a-
beat
yeah, you
you
should
by
beat me
more,
by
is what you're
30
saying.
seconds.
Yeah, on the
At
climbs.
least, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you lost 20 seconds. So everyone who hates hearing about race reports, sorry. This whole month of racing and Sea Otter
it's
and
a
lots
lot.
of racing.
Yeah.
More racing tonight. 4 races this weekend for me.
Trying to share what we learn.
Yeah, exactly. And the videos too.
Yeah. Let's go into Ben.
Let's do it.
He says, this is just praise. We wanted to share it because a lot of you, by the way, send this in, which thank you for doing that. That's awesome. Once again, you can do it at trainerroad.com/podcast. We like to read them every once in a while for y'all, even if it doesn't have a question. So he says, thanks for the excellent training program. And he says, obligatory 5 stars for both podcast and the application. Nice, thanks. And he mentions that he was rating the application on Google Play, which since he has an Android app, so you can do that as well. Please do so. We'd appreciate it. He says, I've been using TrainerRoad for about 8 months. My FTP has gone from 235 to 312. And he says, also, I won my first race ever. I've been doing triathlons on and off for the past 8 years or so, using very unstructured training and achieving a few age group wins. So for those that aren't triathletes, he's differentiating between the overall win and an age group win. He had gotten age group wins before, but never an overall win, meaning the fastest person of the day. A couple of weeks ago, I won my first race, the Florida Keys Community College Sprint Triathlon. Thanks for your stellar advice in the podcast. I felt like I warmed up well, had a good nutrition plan, excessive amounts of caffeine, thanks to Nate, and a winning mental attitude. I swam hard, had the fastest bike split, 21:38 for 8 miles, 296 normalized power, and ran a PR in the 5K of 22:24. Obviously, I've gotten much faster on the bike, but I've been surprised how much my swim and run have also improved, so thanks for making it easy to work hard. And he says, I only lost to the winning relay by 29 seconds, saw their runner finish, but was too far back to do anything about it. Pretty small local race, but it still felt great to win. Thanks again for the great products.
Good job, Ben, and good job, Chad. Some people aren't aware that we have triathlon plans with swims and runs.
True.
And people like this, they do great. And our Kona qualifiers, people actually doing great at Kona just following that.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty great.
Pretty cool.
The last thing I want to cover just on that is never feel bad because you've gotten, and I'm going to say in air quotes here, just a local win for a small race, something that you're calling a small race. A win's a win, and I don't mean a blue ribbon mentality here. I just mean that we only have the opportunity to be competitive within the realm that we have, meaning like you may only be able to race locally. You may not be able to race nationally, or you may just never be a person that's going to win at a national level, something like that. So for you to overcome and achieve at whatever rate that you have in whatever field you have is awesome. So I feel like it's important not downplay achievements.
Most
is
of
what
the
I'm getting
time. I won districts as like a cross 3 with 2 other riders, one a junior.
Still,
That
for you, I feel like especially
Some of them are a little hard to justify.
just by that.
But here's the thing. Look at how bad your bike handling was before a year ago. It would have prohibited you from even pushing that hard on a cross course, right? So I feel like you got to take the wins and be okay with them.
Okay.
All right, let's get into Alex's question. He says, I've been listening to your podcast for a couple of weeks now and love it. I would also love to give TrainerRoad a try, but currently a sophomore in high school, I don't have much opportunity to make money. So what are some of the best budget setups I could use to fully utilize what TrainerRoad has to offer without breaking the bank? Nate, you should take this one.
Ooh,
I
okay.
mean, you designed TrainerRoad.
Yeah. So, Alec, you're going to want to get used stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to want to beg, borrow, or steal a speed sensor from somebody. And I think being young, you ask other people for a speed sensor, and I swear that someone that you know has a speed sensor in a drawer
Probably.
that they used to have. That's either an ANT Plus or Bluetooth one. Get that, put it on your bike.
Yes.
And then you're going to want to find a trainer. And I swear, too, trainers are great on Craigslist. There's a whole bunch of people who have bought a trainer who either have moved to a smart trainer, like they have a dumb, I like calling them dumb trainers, a dumb trainer, and then move to a smart trainer. Try to get one of those. And again, if you're in high school, ask one of the, on Facebook, there's a group or something or a mailing list. Ask them and say, hey, I'm in high school. I'll give it back, or I'll pay it forward to another high school in the future once I get out of this time. Can I borrow a trainer for these many months? Mm-hmm. And then with the speed sensor and that, you can get going.
Yeah, that's with virtual power. It's pretty easy to do.
Then, Alec, ask your parents, say, hey, I want to train a bunch. And you want me at home while I do this, so pay for my subscription.
There we are. It'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
I would gladly pay for my child's subscription to something that makes them healthy.
Yep.
And we're assuming you have a bike, so you could do outdoor versions of the workouts based on perceived exertion.
Yep,
Yeah.
that too.
That's the most bare bones approach available.
The other thing that I want to mention here is, so if you are going to you're going to buy items like that, speed sensors usually run around $30, Bluetooth ones that you can find, just to give you an idea of the cost. And then a trainer, you could find like the one that we usually recommend for non-smart trainers. I prefer non-smart, Nate, is Kinetic Road Machine.
Tomato.
Yeah, exactly. A Kinetic Road Machine. That's like, it just feels so good. And you can find them. I've seen them for really cheap on used sites, like people posting them up.
And they last a long time.
They do. They really do. So that's a really good trainer. You can find that for like $270 brand new, but online I've seen them for like $60 that people are selling at different times. So
Birthday present too, Alec. Ask for that.
Yeah. So, and the other thing I want to cover is you don't get like, I don't train with a smart trainer. And I feel like a lot of people, when I hear them talking about it, they say, I just train with virtual power. You still get the same exact benefit that you're getting from training with power if you have a power meter or smart trainer when you have something like that.
You just can't compare.
Yeah, you just don't compare it.
You hear about this, and I see in the forum too, people are like, I compare, like, my FTP is 320 and yours is 300 and I have virtual power and you don't. And it just, you can't compare with virtual power. It's just to yourself.
Yeah, and even then, like power meters to smart trainers, a lot of the time, it's even tricky to compare there.
Even power meters to power meters,
yes.
Depending on the brand.
Yep.
Some power meters are notoriously go high, or usually it's high. You usually don't see a power meter is notoriously low because no one will buy it.
Right.
So,
Yeah. If you're gonna err on the other side, right? Yeah.
The encouraging side.
Right. So let's get into Ben's question. He says, longtime podcast listener and forum poster, first time question asker here. Thank you so much for the wonderful podcast and product. After taking some time off the bike last summer to pursue a 5K PR, I've gone from an FTP of 242 in July 2018 to an FTP just north of 300 today. Nice job, Ben. I'm hoping to eke out another 20 or 30 watts before my A race in August. As another bigger, taller guy, Nate's guidance on fueling workouts has been particularly helpful for me. Those big guys burn a lot of KJs. He says you've talked a lot about using sauna sessions after workouts as a way to speed up the heat acclimation process. So my question is, if there have been studies or if there have been any studies, or if you have any anecdotal information with respect to whether the sauna session has to occur immediately after the workout to be effective. I do most of my training at home, and I don't think installing a sauna within the next few years is in the plans, but I do belong to a gym with a sauna. Would using the sauna 30 minutes to an hour after my workout still provide benefits?
Probably not with a gap. I mean, you'll still get the benefits of some exposure to heat, but what we're looking for by following your workout as closely as possible with a sauna session is that your core temperature is already elevated. So that elevation of core temperature kind of gets you off and running before you even need to, before you've actually had a chance to cool down. So if you were to jump in the sauna after you have cooled down, you probably have to make it a longer sauna session to achieve some of the same benefit. And it's hard to elevate core temperature just sitting in a sauna. Much easier to do it on a bike, especially if, as I've done in the past, toward the end of the workout, you turn the fan off 10 or 15 minutes. And even if that only includes your cool down, you'll generate a lot of heat.
Yes.
You'll be surprised. And then you hop in the sauna already heated up. And I mean, from minute one, you're already experiencing some of the physiologic and even psychological, I guess, benefits of this heat acclimation training, or this hyperthermic training as it's termed. And a really good resource on this is a blog post I've referenced many times, and we'll link to it in the show notes. But it has no fewer than 48 studies. I'd say probably 2/3 of them are specifically about hyperthermic training, and in particular sauna training. So lots of resources on the matter. Plenty of anecdotal data. I don't know why there's not much point in sharing that when there is this much scientific data to back it up.
Right.
And then I'll briefly cover some of it since we've touched on this a lot of times. But again, what you're after is elevated core temperature prior to the sauna session. So, I mean, if you take 5 minutes to go towel off or go to the bathroom or something, then hop in the sauna, you're probably not going to miss out on any of the benefits. But there's kind of two sides of this, the endurance benefit side and the general benefit side. And with the endurance benefit, primarily we're looking at improvements in plasma volume. So more water in your blood, put simply, water-ish in your blood. And that improves thermoregulation, helps you keep a lower core temperature, which means you could do more work before you overheat. It also makes you more sweat sensitive, and you have a higher sweat rate. So your body sweats earlier and it sweats more. And in the process of doing so, it reduces your electrolyte loss. So the more you get used to this, the more adapted to heat training you get, or heat exposure you get, the less electrolytes you lose, even though you're sweating even more.
Right. Yeah. Body becomes more efficient in that regard.
Yep. It starts to learn. It adapts. There is evidence of increased glucose transport, which means you're getting more blood to more sugar to the muscle. This also improves insulin and sensitivity, and there's a lot of benefits that go along with that. In particular, your BCA uptake, your branched chain amino acid uptake, and less protein degradation are tied to this improvement in insulin sensitivity, which is tied to this uptick in glucose transporters. And then there's a lot of information on this, almost enough that we could do an individual deep dive on this topic alone. But there's an increase in something called heat shock proteins, and they're exactly what they sound like. You expose your body to heat shock, and you get an uptick in these particular proteins. One of their benefits is that they protect against, and there are many, that they protect against rhabdomyolysis. So that very harsh breakdown of muscle tissue that leads to some pretty severe results.
CrossFitters should be using saunas.
There's a case for it for sure.
Yep.
And then increased red blood cell count. That's never a bad thing. I mean, more oxygen carrying capacity, increased muscle perfusion, which is getting the nutrients in the blood into the muscle. This improves, and this might also be tied to the decrease in glycogen usage, because we're getting more oxygen and we can work more aerobically. We can stretch that sugar farther because aerobic metabolism yields far more energy than anaerobic does. And then the general benefits is regrowth of muscle tissue. And given this study, and there may have been later human studies on this was done in rats. But, for obvious reasons, we can't, ethical reasons, we can't experiment on humans like we do on rats. It's arguable whether we should be experimenting on rats either, but that's neither here nor there.
Rabbit hole going down that one.
And then increases in growth hormone. And one study in particular showed that by day 3, there was a 16 times increase in growth hormone in these subjects. I mean, that's a heck of a lot. And the same with IGF, so insulin-like growth factor 1, which both of these have to do with restoration of or regrowth of bone, cartilage, and muscle. So overall, what we're looking at is reduced protein degradation, less muscle loss during workouts and post-workout. Also increases in BDNF. This is a brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which has to do with your neurons and your synapses, both their growth and their health. So better brain activity, better brain health, to put it simply. And then increases in endorphin sensitivity. So, your runner's high could actually be at a higher level, a greater release of endorphins, more pain modulation, if you will.
It sounds like it's so beneficial
Sounds like it's too beneficial.
These are all individual studies, so it's not like you're going to get all these things because you jump into a sauna 30 times a week, a couple times, or 30 minutes at a time, a couple times, 3 times. You'll get all of it. But so that leads us to the recommended application, and there's some pretty wide ranges out here in terms of temperature, in terms of how long they stay in the sauna, how many times they stay in the sauna. But in general, it seems to be, try to keep it immediately post-workout so you have that elevated core temperature. The duration and the frequency, we're looking at anywhere from 15 to 60 minutes is what I commonly see. 30 minutes seems to be the most commonly utilized, anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week, 3 being probably the most common. They start this like 15 days out from race and try to do it up as close to the event as possible because those declines in the plasma volume and the reversal of these adaptations happens pretty quickly.
Yeah.
As far as the temperatures, I've seen everything from 41 Celsius, which is a little over 100 Fahrenheit, all the way up to 100 Celsius, which is 212 Fahrenheit, which is ridiculous. I mean, that's obviously the extreme end of things. I don't know anybody who makes a sauna. You could,
I think your hair would just.
I'm guessing those were animal studies, but
Slow roast.
Broil actually is the
literally,
setting you do. Yeah,
it is literally a roast. But most commonly, we're looking at 120 to 130 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's about what my sauna goes up to. So that's what I do.
What about
infrared? Like 50 to 55 Celsius.
What about infrared saunas?
That's most of what I read. There were dry saunas, and I think dry saunas and infrared saunas are basically synonymous.
No, or infrared is like it's like a little microwave to make you feel hotter, but it's not the same temperature.
Okay, that's what I use, and that does get up to 130.
Yeah, and then a dry sauna would be just heat. So it'd be radiant heat that you just get in your skin.
Oh, a sauna, versus a steam room, of course.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. Yeah, I from what we've heard, I believe we actually talked about this on a podcast prior, but there wasn't much of a difference between there. But it doesn't need to be.
Both heat you up.
I haven't seen one thing that said this is better than the other. Infrared is better than dry. Is better than.
If you live in Arizona, based off of that, you can just stay outside after your workout.
Just walk outside.
Quite literally. Yeah. I mean,
and you'd be fine.
Got to concern yourself with sun exposure at that point, but. Yeah, we're just looking for a further increase or at least a leveling off at a high level of your core temperature.
So my question is, do you have to have the exercise and then elevate, or can you just elevate it in the sauna and just be in there longer?
That's what I was saying. I mean, if you don't bring that to the table, that addition, that pre-elevation of your core temperature, then it's going to take longer to get up to a level that actually stresses the body to a point where it starts to adapt in these ways.
So he could then still get benefit.
I think
just
so.
being there longer.
I think so, that's it. You're going to have to sit in the sauna longer. You're going to have to bring yourself back up to the temperature at which you left your workout, stay there for a little while, and expose yourself to some time at that elevated core temperature. And I don't know if there's any hard numbers on this. It's not like you have to reach such and such core temperature or have to be in a sauna at this temperature for this length of time. Any exposure to it is going to have some effect. It's just a question of how much.
Mm-hmm. Should we get a sauna?
I mean, sure. Yeah.
I've got one. It's my bike room at home now. I've moved, so it's a new bike room. It's a small room. All it accommodates is 2 bikes and trainers and a sauna.
Yeah, and you have it's almost like a closet sauna. It's like really,
it's a 2
people
person.
can sit in it, but
person.
they're pretty close.
And surprisingly affordable. They don't cost much.
Yeah,
it
just takes a lot of room.
It does. I mean, this one, I think it's a 4x4 footprint, so it's not too bad. And then 6 feet tall.
The benefits seem awesome on here. I've used them before, so I used them actually at Powder Creek Lodge when we did that, but I didn't have elevated core temperature going into that, obviously.
And even just the heat exposure, even outside of the endurance sports realm, they use it to treat a lot of maladies. I mean, even depression and psychological disorders.
2 things that spending 30 minutes in a sauna, depending on the heat, is really hard. For people that don't, it can be extremely tough.
It's
You'll
surprising.
get used to it.
You will. The first couple of exposures, I mean, maybe do 15 or 20 minutes instead of shooting for the entire 30 because it gets almost puts you in a panic state.
Yes.
It's really uncomfortable. And if you're just watching those last couple of minutes tick down, it can really mess with your mind.
It can, yeah. So give yourself time to work into that. But then on the other side of things too, I found, and you touched on this with the sweat rate thing, I'm a person that doesn't naturally sweat a lot. And that usually bites me at some point. I have an early season race that is unusually hot. And then, the sweat problems are tough.
I think there was even a study or 2 that talked about improved vascularization too.
Yes, yeah.
It rings a bell.
And it also better performance in cold weather.
Yes.
Even if you don't do hot weather.
Not necessarily cold weather, but non-hot weather.
Non-hot weather, yeah.
Yeah. You smiled a lot.
Yeah, because committed to do Cape Epic in 2021
Yes, with Sofia Gomez Villafane.
Well, see, and all of us should have done this prior to Kona. I guarantee we would have had better early rides in Kona because by the end of the trip, by the end of the trip, the rides felt pretty good regardless of the heat.
We were pretty good
but
the whole
early
time,
on. Sure, you were. But I'm saying you could have been better.
Yeah.
It's I noticed after Powder Creek Lodge, after Kona, because it was basically living in a sauna, but after Kona, my sweat rate was back way up. I felt like I was sweating early in my workouts, and I liked that. That was good. And then after Powder Creek Lodge, spending times in the sauna there, my workouts once again, even though we were up in frigid Canadian mountains up there, but that heat exposure ended up as soon as I came back and got on the bike, I was sweating early again.
Yeah, even without the sauna, I mean, you spend all your time, 90% of your time, 95% of your time hiking, and depending on the amount of layers you have on you, your
core temperature's up.
Pretty lifted in terms of core temp.
Yeah, so it's and I notice improved benefits whenever that happens, and I know Sofia Gomez Villafane, who you're going to be racing with there at Cape Epic, which is going to be an awesome team, by the way.
So cool. Have we talked about this?
Yeah, I don't think we have. No,
okay.
It's going to be great.
It's 2 years away, and you're going to hear about it every week.
I'm
already like moving races around in my head. I'm like, what am I going to do for this 2-week build? Because she's way faster than me, but I need to come up to her level in 2 years.
She's a Stan's Pivot Pro Team rider. She's one of the best mountain bikers in the country right now in the U.S.
Well, she has 2 national championships in Argentina.
Yeah, she's the dual national champion in Argentina right now, in short track and XCO. Wow. So she's legit. But
got work to do.
You're screwed, buddy.
But
you'll be fine.
She's also mentioned this earlier in the year. We had that race in San Dimas in Benelli at Benelli Park. And you can see a YouTube video that we posted with Keegan on that one, a race analysis video on YouTube. But she said that she isn't a natural sweater either, and she just she melted. She had in the middle of the race, she said she felt like she just hit like that boiling point.
Sure, sure. She can't dissipate heat. Her body's not accustomed to dealing with temperatures like that, and it can't work as hard. And she's trying to work as hard and overwhelming the system.
And I know Keegan and Sophia, I know you have room for a sauna at the place that you guys have in the garage.
Absolutely,
every room. Just move Keegan's motorcycle aside and it'd be set. So you'll need it for Cape Epic, right? That's going to be exciting.
Really anything where you have to transition quickly into high temps.
All right, let's get into Anthony's question. He says, new to TrainerRoad, really enjoying it so far, and I've really been impressed with your podcast. The content is top-notch, learned a lot, and really amazing production quality. Hats off to those around the table and behind the scenes. Hats off, producer Ian.
Thanks, Ian.
So he says 5 stars on the app or for the app and on iTunes. Thank you. You can leave those ratings. We appreciate it. My question revolves around recovery before a good ramp test. I have a race right on the final day of my Sweet Spot Base 1 plan, which I'm estimating will be upwards of 150 TSS, so that's a pretty hard race. He says, so it kind of breaks and he says, in quotes, smooth taper ramp to Sweet Spot Base, he says, smooth taper to ramp, then Sweet Spot Base 2. He says, what's a good way for a newcomer to structured training to know how to effectively recover after an out-of-plan high TSS event, be that a tough weekend group ride or race, etc. So you don't underperform when rolling into a plan or ramp test. This is a common one that I see, a lot of people saving themselves up.
Yeah, it's your A race of the year.
Well, yeah, and that's the first thing. That's the first thing we need to dispel. You do not save for a ramp test. I mean, we don't want you to come into it overly fatigued either, but this isn't something you taper for at all. Maybe you tack on an extra day recovery when you know you're coming out of a weekend that inspired a hefty amount of fatigue, an unusual amount of fatigue.
We even in the process of designing this ramp test, I remember taking multiple ramp tests, and I remember being fatigued and saying no, I don't want to take it.
Yeah, we did it in both states.
I don't know if it was one of you two was no, you need to take it. We want to test this out. And it was interesting. I won't lie in saying that it felt harder, but I got the same exact number.
The motivation
might be fatigued before and then after.
Yeah, the motivation might be a little more difficult to conjure, but the performance will probably still be there. I mean, we haven't really seen evidence otherwise.
Yeah. Meanwhile, if I was trying to pace a 20-minute, that might be a little tougher.
For real, yeah. Right? I mean, just the mental fortitude it takes to get through even a set of 8s or a single 8 for that matter, let alone a 20, is you got to be, I would say, probably physically more fresh than a ramp test and certainly more motivated.
I think that's probably the bigger focused, thing that people lack a lot of the time is
the motivation. is especially with a ramp test is absolutely crucial. And for this reason, I mean, if you have the option of doing this head-to-head with a training partner or just anybody, it's so much more inspiring, and you'll probably find yourself nudge up to a slightly higher level. I mean, maybe you'll last 30 more seconds than you would have. But the fact is motivation is crucial to performing well, representative of your actual fitness. during a ramp test.
I think there's tricks you can do mentally. There's so many studies where they put people on, they say go to exhaustion, and then right when they get to exhaustion point, the person says $100 to go 30 more seconds.
They can do it.
They always go 30 more seconds.
Yeah.
So you say this to yourself, like
Yeah.
you say, I'm going to give up. You say, oh, I can do 10 more seconds.
Yeah.
I can do 10 more seconds.
Or
after
you do
that.
3 tests in succession, 5 minutes each, and the first one peters out here. That's your basis for comparison. The next 2 will probably improve. The third one will probably be the best of them all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very psychological.
Yeah, I making bargains with yourself like that. Another one is if you have, like you said, a training partner or significant other. I have had my wife. I've said I should be getting to the tough part of the ram test at this time. Like, can you come in and like, like
even if they're
yell
not
at me?
riding with you, just
tell
have
me to go harder.
observers.
Yeah, that can help.
I picture your young son. Go, daddy. Go,
Yeah,
daddy.
exactly.
Totally, anything.
Another thing, music is huge.
Yeah, up-tempo
Yeah.
music.
Yeah.
That you like. Another thing on this too.
Funeral dirge or something.
Some people
I think it kind of goes without saying.
Bagpipes.
Up tempo.
Well, it's just different time. Like there's music that you like, and there's music that's good for exercising.
Yeah.
Different stuff.
Agreed.
I want to create a playlist that's actually bad for ram test, just for the humor factor.
Demotivational.
Why?
Yeah, Enya.
Yeah. One of the other things that you're like, well, man, my ramp test now is not. You think it's not accurate because I wasn't motivated enough. I wasn't doing these things, but if you can't conjure up this motivation too in regular training, like
that's a good point.
You don't want to say, oh, it's your self-worth is not tied to your FTP. This is just to get training zones to push you forward, okay?
Yes,
like
exactly
just
right.
a measure of your fitness.
Exactly.
Stop
And
using it as a comparison.
if you, I think this is our point on this too. This is going to be my A race. I'm going to taper for it. I'm going to do 800 milligrams caffeine. I'm going to take beat shots, right? I'm going to carb load, and then I'm going to have a whole 800. I'm going to have a bunch of people around me. I'm going to do it live and have music blaring. And then my regular races, I'm just going to do
Your regular
training.
trying to
workouts,
figure it
you
out.
don't do any of that?
Any of that, right?
It's going to be hard.
Exactly. So I would even repeat kind of what you do in regular workouts.
Completely.
Or else you're going to most likely fail your workouts in the future because the same motivation won't be there that you have for the ramp test.
Yeah,
It's not
that's
about just
excellent
getting
point.
as high of a score as you can, even though it's fun. And I understand that like every watt makes it makes me feel better at least.
Sure.
It is.
But it's not, your self-worth is not tied into your FTP. And it's very hard too on the internet because it seems like everyone has a higher FTP than you.
Of course, yeah.
Everyone does. But
That's how it
they don't
goes.
always race better than you. So
Yeah, exactly.
racing's different than you can always beat people with higher FTPs. I think all of us have many times beat people with higher FTPs, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I've been beaten by people with lower FTPs.
Yeah, like way lower, right?
Of course.
It's annoying.
Yeah.
And no matter what, you're going to have a time where there becomes overlap between a bad day and a ramp test day. That's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
So it's really about how you move forward, I guess, from there. And I guess there's kind of 2 ways.
It's really 2 options. You can either repeat the test and probably do it on a better day. I don't know that actually it may be the best the next day. I mean, these aren't tremendously stressful. They're over inside of 20 minutes. I mean, you can only do so much damage, especially considering the first half of that 20 minutes, first 2/3 of that 20 minutes isn't even that strenuous.
Yep.
So you could repeat it, or you could simply self-adjust, like we've talked about with an under-assessment on a different format FTP.
Yep.
FTP test, sorry.
The one thing I would say with that is we've talked about this plenty, especially in recent episodes, but self-adjustment, it takes a lot of knowing your body, and I definitely would favor a conservative approach and move things up just slightly and see where you feel and test and don't just, do one workout and think like, good, I can move it up again because I completed that workout. Maybe spend some time there, see how it feels after a week or 2 of training, and then you can ramp up.
And with
more.
experience, you'll get much better at this self-adjustment.
Totally.
Yeah.
Carolyn says, love the podcast, 5 stars all the way. It's the reason I became a TrainerRoad user. Sweet. She says, I'm a 29-year-old woman. I've been cycling for 10 years, racing off and on for the past 7. Whenever weights have been discussed previously on the podcast, Chad usually mentions that women and older athletes ought to be doing some form of resistance training for bone density reasons and staving off muscle loss, etc. I guess that applies to everybody, but particularly them. Right, Chad?
Yeah, endurance athletes are especially... what's the word I'm looking for? Subject to bone loss because it's a non-weight bearing sport, so we don't deal with a lot of impact that stimulates bone growth.
Yeah. She mentions osteoporosis runs in my family, and I'd love to do what I can to prevent it. I've read Maximum Overload by DeVore and Wallach, but it seems like it wouldn't be a great idea to implement during a race season full
Probably
of crits.
not that book in particular.
She says, that being said, what sort of lifts would be recommended by the TrainerRoad crew? How should it be periodized, figuring a traditional road racing season of April, May through September? And how frequently should resistance training be done at a bare minimum? Thanks in advance for a great podcast. Learned a ton.
Yeah, first off, that book's an interesting read, but that's hard training. So trying to lump that in with really anything past base, and if you're doing sweet spot based, even trying to lump it in with that would be pretty tough.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Chad, but some of the weightlifting stuff, it's like if that was your main sport, right? So
this one is aimed at endurance athletes. I can't remember how they recommended to weave it in. So this one, in its defense, it is about improving endurance performance, but they're still really costly workouts, and they take a heavy toll.
Yeah, I find the older stuff, even thinking of like, I think it was the training Bible, Friel's training Bible for mountain bikers, something like that back in the day. Yeah. It recommended doing like maxing out the weight on the bar and then doing squats as hard as you possibly, with like massive weight and doing that as much as you can because you press hard on your mountain bike pedals, right? Like it's things have been refined over the years.
There's a lot wrong with that. Yeah, but that's what we knew then.
Exactly
what we thought then.
Yeah, we've learned more. So Chad, I guess getting into what we have learned, talking about the key lifts for cyclists.
Yeah, so
in your opinion, of course.
As I already kind of talked about, some of the shortcomings with cycling is that we miss out on a lot of the stress that comes with different types of sport that actually lend themselves to stronger joints, stronger bones. We don't have sufficient joint loading. I mean, even when we're drilling it, we're only doing it at a small percentage of what our muscles are actually capable because we have to do such high repetition. So even then, even during a hard surge up a 30-second hill, it's only so much stress on the joints. It's only going to be so effective at stimulating bone growth and that in particular. And we don't do any eccentric contractions. So we're just concentric. We just press the pedal down and then basically relax. Press the pedal down and basically relax. We don't really resist that contraction and do the lengthening side of it, which should be the flip side of it to balance out the muscle actions.
Right.
And because of this, we're missing out on two of the key bone growth stimulators. Yeah. Osteoporosis and osteopenia, which is basically just different severity. Osteoporosis being the more severe, and then sarcopenia. So that's muscle degradation that happens with disuse and aging. These are things we want to stave off, and that's why I typically include masters athletes because bone loss is certainly a concern for all athletes, endurance especially. Certainly aging athletes, but also sarcopenia. We're trying to mitigate that slow decline in our muscle function. Yeah. And that's what I term these, and probably someone else has termed these, or maybe it's commonly termed slow decline diseases. These are the sort of things that creep up on you. You don't feel it. It's not like breaking a bone or pulling a ligament or something. It's nothing so obvious, so it can creep up on anybody because it's just not evident. And when it happens, you're usually so far gone that it's downright discouraging. It's like, how, as an experienced high-level athlete, can I possibly be so bone deficient or deficient at all?
Coggin, I believe, had osteoporosis or low.
Not surprised.
Yep. Because he was
just riding.
Great cyclist, but just riding.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. I mean, every time you see a Grand Tour rider crash, it's almost certainly a broken bone of some sort.
Bird bones.
Scapula, vertebra.
On the climb last year in the Tour.
He fell over going like 5 miles an hour and broke his hip.
Yeah.
Broke his hip. How old is this guy?
Right.
He's not 65. He's not 75. So the fact is, we need to do something that mitigates both these declines, both in bone formation or bone loss and muscle loss.
And I'd argue too, and I think you'd argue this too, Chad, even for the younger male athletes, you're still going to crash. You still want to be, strong in general. There's so many benefits, but have stronger bones in general.
Pete and I, and probably plenty of other riders, refer to strength training as crash prevention or crash protection. Just putting a little extra muscle on the bone, strengthening those joints a little bit, strengthening the bones a little bit, I think he's in the same boat as I am. We've never really crashed out of a race. We've crashed in races plenty of times, free lap back in and got to finish the race, or tried to chase back on depending on what type of race. But the fact is we weren't injured to the point where we needed to be whisked away in an ambulance.
Yeah. That's a knock on wood statement right there.
Yeah. I mean, it happens to anybody. It doesn't matter how fit you are. You can crash hard enough to break bones.
Sure, of course. Yeah. It's going to happen.
So I'm not saying this will prevent that in all cases. As far as the lifts in particular, I'm going to keep it super simple and just give you, one for the posterior chain lower, upper, one for the posterior or anterior. So front of the body, upper and lower, back of the body, upper and lower.
And I'm going to preface this really quick because people are going to jump into the forum and say like, hey, I want to see what these lifts are, that sort of stuff. We'll end up putting down the list that we just have here, right here in the doc that we're referring from. We'll have the list in there so then you can see what they are.
Yeah, and in terms of seeing how to do these exercises, there are so many resources on the internet. And I'll look up there's one in particular that Pete and I have been discussing heavily back and forth. I think Pete's actually subscribed to the service. The man is Marcus Phil. He's a CrossFit competitor, and man, is he good at what he does.
Nice.
Really good resource too. YouTube clips on every exercise he prescribes. Just little 10-second clips that show you it a couple times over. Really, really, I mean, the picture captures 1,000 words, right?
Sweet.
So deadlifts, first and foremost. Honestly, I think if you were just going to do one exercise, it would be a deadlift. And there are so many variations of a deadlift. You don't have to just grab a big, heavy barbell and figure out how to do it at the risk of, pretty severe injury if you don't do it right, especially if you're going heavy.
Yeah.
So you can do one-legged versions of it. You can use a trap bar where you stand in the middle of it. You can limit the range of it. You can use dumbbells. You can use kettlebells. I mean, there's just so many ways to load a deadlift.
Yep.
Push-ups and pull-ups, and I know one's pushing and one's pulling, but these are body weight exercises that are pretty much attainable anywhere. If you got something you can lift yourself up on, you got something to do a pull-up, you can do a body row underneath the table. I mean, a lot of options for this. And a push-up doesn't get more basic than that, and man, is that a beneficial exercise. It engages potentially the entire body, both posterior and anterior chain. There's a lot of muscle contributing to that if you do it right.
Yep.
I'm not the biggest proponent of bench press. I think it's great to have a big bench press, and I like doing bench press, but in terms of it making you a better cyclist or really even a better strength athlete, there's so many better ways to go, push-ups being one of them.
Oh, darn it. Vanity
It's
muscle.
still good. It's still a good movement, but it's just not as functional as anything.
I don't see curls on this list either,
chain.
Chad. A little sad. Sorry.
Beach muscles, curls for girls.
Going to the
they're fine
squats.
too, but not in this.
Let's go into squats.
Yes. So the back of the legs is covered by the deadlift, fronts of the legs by squats. And again, million variations. You can do, my personal favorites are split squats simply because cycling is basically a one-leg sport. I mean, we work one leg at a time while the other leg recovers. So whether you do Bulgarian, whether the trailing leg is elevated, or you do lunges where you lunge outward and back, whether you simply adopt a split stance and drop down, so many ways to do it, so many ways to load it too.
So a squat, there's some people who do have bad backs or something like that.
Yep.
What would be an alternative to a squat for them? If they can't
load weight on their shoulders.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just grab dumbbells and keep them at my sides.
Yep.
Yeah, so just a suitcase sort of lift.
There are also, I think, this is a total talk to your doctor, your physical therapist, but I think there are different types of back problems. And some people have a back problem, and what they do then is they say, I can't have any weight on my back ever for the rest of my life, and they ignore it. And I would stress to talk to a physical therapist and try to work into growing the muscles and rehabbing it.
Rehabilitation,
Yep,
absolutely.
exactly. And get back to the point where you can actually do some of these things.
Just look at it from a quality of living perspective, not even becoming a better cyclist or being any form of strength athlete, just being able to live more comfortably and more functionally.
Yeah. Yep.
And I want to say too, I want to stress this, it's not 100% of people can do this. Sometimes you have spine injuries and problems with this that you can't.
Yep. We're assuming a reasonably healthy person who's just neglected this aspect of their training.
I think this happens more often though, as someone says, I have a bad back, and without even seeing anyone, they just say, I gotta ignore all these things because I have a bad back. I gotta do leg press. I can't ever load anything because I have a bad back. And then it just actually gets worse because it gets weaker.
Or worst case, they have a bad back and think I'm going to correct it with strength training and I'm going to do deadlifts or squats or something that
Too much too soon.
vastly exacerbates the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are things we shouldn't do?
Well, in the case of, so let me jump back to that because let's first cover just the other pulling exercise. So you can do pull-ups where you pull overhead, or you can do body rows, or just dumbbell rows where you bend over and pull the weight up. And those are very akin to what we do on the bike, the posture we assume, the stress we're exerting. So I'm a big fan of rows, whether they're done body weight style or dumbbells, barbell. Again, many ways to load it. What I don't want to see ever are hamstring curls and leg extensions. Those two machines need to be destroyed. The way they load joints, and especially when you start to go heavy, so dangerous.
Yeah.
And the way they build your muscles is so dangerous because they're addressing muscles, they're not addressing movements. And they're just opening you up to so many potential issues and not really doing anything beneficial for you.
Yeah.
You got to be able to string that stuff together. You have to have the hamstrings countering the quads countering the hamstrings. These work as a unit, as a pair. And when you do them in isolation, I mean, there are reasons for it, rehab being one of them, teaching movement patterns perhaps, although that's a weak one. So just please don't use those machines. Those ones in particular, they're so dangerous.
I feel too when you go to a gym, the people who really don't ever lift weights, they hit those machines first.
Yeah, I get it.
for sure.
I get it.
Yeah,
They're
I
very
see it.
self-explanatory.
Yeah.
You can fake your way through something that looks like it should be doing something. Doesn't really challenge you. Doesn't wear you out.
Right. What else would you want to add before we get into periodization? of
Well, so
this?
just keep in mind what we're looking for are heavy. It's a combination or one or the other of either heavy loading or time under tension, and there are arguments for both, and they both spur hypertrophy or muscle growth. They both spur strengthening. They both reinforce, spur bone growth and muscle growth, etc. So it's up to you to decide. Do I want to go lower weight, higher rep, or high weight, low rep? There are benefits to both, and there are also dangers to both. So you can basically pick your poison. And then of course plyometrics enter into it too. They're a little more specific, and again, the differences between these three are probably good subject for a later deep dive if we want to hit the strength training end of things. But let's just leave it at that.
Cool. On the periodization side of things, in the question she was asking how to fit it into a road season, which is talking May through.
Periodize it kind of the same way. I mean, you got to consider when you're in base period, you're probably not doing things that are as muscularly taxing as they will be during the build and certainly the specialty phase. So that's when you can probably get away with the more demanding stuff. The moderate weight done a lot of times, but what I really want to see during a base phase is preparatory training where you learn proper movement mechanics. Whether you start to load it is entirely up to you. You could just keep it light and make sure you're doing it right before you start moving forward with heavier lifts. If the form's not there, you never get to go heavy. You just don't get to. You have to figure out how to move properly before you can start loading these unless you want to risk injury.
Yeah.
Then when you move into the build, that's typically when we move into the heavy lifts. By then you've acquired enough technique and skill and you know how to do things properly. So now you can challenge your muscles and your joints and your bones with heavier loads moved only a few times, 3 to 5 sort of rep stuff. And a lot of these resources that we talked about on the internet will really lay this out for you. And then once you get into specialty, it's really just about maintenance. And with this comes my advice that I've made countless times and will probably make countless more, is that you have to weight train year round. This isn't one of those things that you can do seasonally, and just expect those gains to remain. You stop training it, it goes away, just like anything else. So if you want to maintain these strength gains, you want to maintain a strong body in general, then you have to maintain it. But as with all maintenance, it doesn't take much. So we're talking 1 to 2 times per week. One will work. And short workouts, 15, 20, 30 minutes tops, where you hit all these prime movements that we described, hit them hard, hit them briefly, done. There's your maintenance.
Yeah.
Check.
And during a race week would be about the only time I don't recommend doing any strength training, and maybe the week prior to a key event.
Yeah.
So I enjoy weightlifting. How strong is strong enough? When should I stop? Because I always like to add, you add the 5 pounds or the extra reps.
Yeah.
When should I just maintain?
That's a tough one because, you add a pound of fat and it's probably going to do nothing for performance. Unless you're doing ultra endurance and you need the extra, which is unlikely. You add a pound of muscle though, and the scale says you weigh more, but what is that muscle doing? It could be useful, and even upper body and midsection especially. It doesn't have to be all about the legs, and it doesn't come at a loss to performance if you tack on an extra body of upper body or an extra pound of upper body muscle.
Right.
There's a good chance that'll help you do everything better. Riding out of the saddle, cornering with stability, riding rough road.
It could even make you crash better, right?
Honestly, it has a number of times.
Yeah. I think it's. You even look, if you look at the top podium of the mountain bikers that you see, or even Matthew Vanderpool is a slight guy, relatively speaking.
He's got good muscle on him, though.
But when you look at him compared to the other top pro cyclists on the road,
Van Aert too. These are cross riders, and even.
You look at the female side of things too. The top female cross riders and mountain bikers, they look strong. And they have a strong trunk, and they, you know what I mean. So it's like it's a difference that I feel like a lot of the time road cyclists, because it's not made readily apparent every day.
Honestly,
it's something they skip.
Unless you're a Grand Tour climber.
That's what I was going to say.
That's like the only case that I can say where you just don't touch the weights ever. Don't even look at them.
And that's what you see so much, though. Those are the people that get celebrated the most, or the people that win Grand Tours.
Yeah.
And you see them, and you see their upper body, and you're like, I need to be like that. There's
it's
all
the
these
body
people
image
so
problem.
unhealthy.
These people who win classics, right, and other things like that, and even stages in the tour, and they're
built like more general athletes, like athletes that could do something other than climb on a bike.
And your road races are probably way more like closer to those. They're not as hard, but like the classics and that sort of thing, than a grand tour where you have to be light over 27 days
plus life.
And
I mean, everything that goes on outside of the bike, which is a lot.
And remember, you're not paid you're not paid millions of dollars to win that Tour de France.
Yeah, and honestly, if I could advise people to, I mean, just take away one thing, try doing a little bit of lifting and see how it benefits your endurance work.
So can we tease what we're gonna launch soon?
That's your call. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we had this discussion. I said, Chad, this is the exact question we had. I was trying to pitch it to you on here, but I was like, how strong do you want to be? Because you get to a certain point in your deadlift, sure, you could add 10 pounds next week, but like how strong is strong enough?
Yeah.
So what Chad did is he developed 3 different levels depending on what kind of athlete you are, where the strongest athlete being like downhill, enduro, and like a sprinter.
Gravity guys are at the top of that heap.
Yep. Yeah. And then for men and women, for the amount of, like, I think we did it in 5 reps. For the weight, it depends on
3
the
to 5
exercise.
rep range, or
I think it's 5 reps.
I think we just said should be able to do this 5 times.
So as a percentage of your body weight. So what's cool, and this is we'll launch this fairly soon. I don't want to say an exact date, but we recommend that everyone should be a level 1 athlete, like at least a level 1. So this is like basic strength, no matter what you are, you should do that. And then depending on what kind of racer you are, you can move to a 2 or 3. But I really like what you did, Chad, because it gives us a level of how, like, something to shoot for.
Yeah, like this is enough.
Trying to put some hard numbers on it relative to we didn't relate it to body weight at all. Or we did.
Yeah,
it's entirely related to body weight. Yeah, that's right. So just to try to put some hard numbers on stuff that you might not have any idea of. When am I considered strong? I mean, outside of feeling strong, but even then, that's questionable.
And this is for cycling specific, where if you're a CrossFitter, you might like this be like, oh, I need a 500 pound
This is
deadlift.
endurance athletes only. These are recommendations simply for endurance athletes and based on discipline and separated by gender.
I've seen plenty of cyclists actually get into strength training, they start to enjoy it, and then they go on to like forums or Reddit and they start looking at like other people's advice, and then they're like, man, I'm way off.
Lord, there's
right?
so much advice.
Like you said, it's very important that it's taking the context.
Yeah, and this is our view on it. It'll probably take a little bit of tweaking. There might be some lifts where it's like, that percentage of bench press probably doesn't translate well to percentage of overhead press. I think we'll be pretty close on all of it though, and I think they're all minimum requirements. It's the level 1 is where I think anyone should be, even a bantamweight climber. And then whether you decide to go past that is up to you. But if you can't do all those things on the level 1 list, I consider you, and I think most people would, deficient as just an athlete, probably as a human.
As a cyclist, and you look in those forums, think about if you took all the time that you spent cycling and you did it weightlifting or weight training, that's when you could compare.
You'd be swole.
Don't compare yourself.
Different types of athletes.
A lot of people are doing if you did 10 hours a week in the gym, oh my goodness,
gosh,
you would be huge.
Yeah.
So don't. It's a good what you said. Just don't compare yourself to people that only do this. You're a cyclist.
No, we are endurance athletes primarily. You know, if you want to be a blend of the two, then you can figure out maybe level 3 is appropriate for you. But it's probably not going to make you a better climber.
Ian, not producer Ian, but a gentleman named Ian has a question about massage. Says, "Hi guys, love the podcast. Could you talk about sports massage, deep tissue massage? I always feel better for having one, but would love to know what, if any, the physiological changes are that take place and why they're beneficial, or at least why they make my legs feel better. Thank you." This is we see like the question on 2 ends of the spectrum, right? We see, should I get a massage right before a race because I hear that it makes you slower? And then we hear on the other side of things, should I be getting massages regularly because I hear it helps recovery and helps me train better? So we'll dig into that.
So bad news first. There's not really any supportive research to say that this will enhance recovery, improve performance. There's just nothing conclusive, nothing that makes us say absolutely massage is the way to go. Very little in support of it, really. There might be evidence to support improved protein synthesis. So maybe there's something with that, but they've only done animal studies so far, so they can only extrapolate and guess.
I love the idea of massage therapists like massaging a cow.
That's what I thought. I was thinking, how do they massage a mouse?
That's funny.
Yeah. However, it is ubiquitous in pro sports. We've seen evidence of it all the time. NBA players and NFL players, pro cyclists, obviously, they have soigneurs, and many per team in some cases. I mean, some riders have their own Swanee.
Yep.
Chris Froome's got his own. I'm sure of it. He's got to.
Yeah, he does.
Grant as well.
Yeah. Yep.
So there is Maybe not performance enhancement benefit, maybe not even recovery enhancement benefit, but there's clear benefit in that there are things like improved blood flow, which could enhance energy replenishment, rate of glycogen replenishment. More blood flow, more stuff gets to the muscle. It just makes sense. And facilitation of lymph removal, right? We're talking about movement and flushing and stuff. There's nothing to support lactate clearance, and now we know lactate isn't the culprit or the bad boy that we used to think it was, but it doesn't matter anyways, unless you're racing like 15 minutes later. And even then, the high lactate levels don't even enter into it. Lactate is energy, folks. We know this now.
That triggers me pretty hard.
Yeah, it should trigger anybody who's read a book.
This next one triggers me.
Okay, this is good.
Yeah, so toxins. I hear this all the time. Do juice cleanses, do fasts, do massage, do all these things to flush toxins. What are toxins? Can we be more general, more vague?
I used to do this back when I had more energy, but when people would say this, be like, oh, we're talking about what toxins? Can you measure them?
Can you tell me what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. What exactly, like chemical compounds you're talking about, and then how can we measure them as they leave the body?
Right.
Can you measure them in the body? Well,
Where'd they go?
Yeah, where'd they go? Because if they leave, you should be able to. It just
and if we don't do these, are we just coursing with toxins all the time? Are we verging on cancer at any moment?
That's a great point.
I've gotten in pretty. It's my jerk life. I can't do it anymore. So when someone just says toxins, I just look at them and smile and nod. Because I'm sorry, a lot of massage therapists, but they talk about and they say you need to drink a cup of water because you have all these toxins in you now that I've released from your muscles, and you need to then flush all those out.
Yeah, that's right. No.
Okay, so the only there is something to this toxin idea is that if the massage is what's the word? Strong enough, severe enough,
you break muscles.
Yeah, I mean, you do. You actually get what's called PMSM, post-massage soreness and malaise, and it's basically flu-like symptoms because you've incurred muscle damage. So you have all the things that go along with that. But that's those aren't toxins. I mean, that's damage you did during the massage.
Yeah, very different.
Which is a good
You're
point.
causing the toxins.
I mean, there are toxins, but you made them just now.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's this thought too, like you get a sports massage and you're an athlete, and you think, oh, this has to hurt, right? They have to get in there.
Totally
Absolutely.
Think that. Yes.
On some of them. And then I've done that before, and then you have a really bad workout the next day. And it's because we just said, Chad, you're actually damaging the muscles during the massage.
I mean,
you
there
do
are
that with
reasons.
the foam roller yourself too. You know,
there are reasons. If you have muscle adhesions or you have short, tight muscles that are preventing you from moving in a full range of motion, maybe impeding some of your cycling range of motion. Maybe you can't get down in the bars because your back gets so tight, so you have to ride tall. And if you do get low, you're sacrificing power because you can't generate power because you're in so much pain and there's so much tightness in your back. There are reasons to do massage so that you can become a better cyclist, but this is not exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, mobility restrictions for sure. Another one, relaxation. Like
that's the best case for them.
That's the best.
Yes, because we spend so much time in like that fight or flight state when we're training, right? It's very intense.
Sympathetic state,
And to give yourself a dose of some parasympathetic input is really important.
It's like any recovery modality. First and foremost, it probably forces you to rest, to sit there and just enjoy whatever it is, whether it's muscle stimulation or the pants that we just got or going to get. I don't know.
I use I pulled the trigger on those compression boots that you put on that, like, they pump and they fill up air, and zero science drove me to do that other than the fact that I've used them and they feel good.
And it feels good.
It feels good.
And it forces,
and it can be seen as a form of reward. And I think that's maybe the second best case for a massage. Is that if I do this workout or if I do this hard loading block over the next 10 days, I'm going to treat myself to a massage afterward.
And it forces me to lay down. And that's something that I'm probably not going to do otherwise because I can't walk around in those boots.
And it gives you the potential, at least, for a mental disconnect too.
Yep.
You can music is nice.
Yeah, sure.
Typically.
Yeah. So there's absolute benefits to it in that regard, but in terms of the science behind it, somehow
not really. But let's say, and this isn't scientific at all, but the placebo effect is real. Yes. So if for some reason you get a massage and you feel it's very real, you get a massage and you feel better and you feel like I'm going to perform better because that massage was amazing.
Yes.
So I want to be clear on this, but I personally like massage, and there's the sports massage, and I've had that help fix injuries.
Yep.
Like so that's good.
Typically painful.
Yeah, it depends on who you go to and what you're doing, but I've had that. So I actually send a lot of people to a local sports masseuse to fix injuries, and then for the relaxation. I think that's beneficial too, and lower cortisol levels.
I think a lot of massage therapists draw the distinction between relaxation versus a sports massage.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
I mean, do you want to suffer a little bit, or do you just want to be soothed
Yeah.
for an hour and a half?
So I would say for us too, we would never recommend the hard sports massage right before a race or something, or a big training block. Those people that like when Chris Froome gets a massage in between days, they might be releasing some parts of the back, but on the legs, it's
See if you can catch footage of any one of those.
Yeah,
I think Overcoming was a DVD back in the day for what team did they follow? It was interesting though, and you would see the post-race massage every day, and they just move the muscle around. They're not kneading into it and getting aggressive with it. It's a very different form of massage.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go into Marcus's question. He says, since Christmas, I've been trying to manage my nutrition better with some success. My FTP has been rising with my weight slowly falling. Overall, I believe my calorie intake is about right. However, when I look at the net calories over the course of the week, I show a consistent pattern. A deficit over the weekend where I typically ride about 100 miles and then a surplus on my rest days during the week. A typical Sunday would be 3,200 calories consumed, but 2,200 calories used on a ride. And that's not counting everything else that he has with his resting metabolic rate or active metabolic rate that he
How he
has.
rode his bike,
Yeah, exactly. Mountain bike ride versus, just sitting
out of the saddle for 20 minutes.
So he says, this leaves me with a net of only 100,000 calories, forgive me. On Monday, a rest day, I feel hungry, so I typically consume 2,500 calories. I'm around 6 foot and 78 kilograms, and my job is desk-based. My question is, does this approach matter, or should I be trying to more closely match my calorie consumption and usage each day, i.e. consume more on hard days, less on a rest day? Love the podcast and TrainerRoad. This is a very common question that we get for people. They wonder if they should feel bad or if something's wrong because on those rest days after these big days, they feel like they need to eat just as much.
They're hungry.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and that's what makes this difficult too. I mean, if you're hungry, there's a reason for it. If you're eating out of boredom, that's one thing. But if you're eating because you had a really big weekend and you probably didn't match your caloric expenditure all that well with your intake,
right,
then you're going to go into your recovery day pretty hungry. And by starving yourself at that point, you're setting yourself, kind of hobbling yourself. So definitely in terms of glycogen replenishment.
Yes.
Protein synthesis isn't going to be top or it's not going to be top notch. You might need more food than you're giving yourself. You do have to fuel the recovery process. Your body doesn't just magically recover and find the materials it needs in the ether. I mean, you have to provide those, and you have to provide them in adequate amounts.
Yeah. The other thing with this too, we've brought this up before, but I feel like, well, actually, Nate, before I get into that, I want to go to you because you have been like such a proponent of fueling your workouts, and you've outlaid how you've done that. And I feel like it's made a huge difference in your performance. But I never really have heard you talk about what you do on the rest days or recovery days. How do you manage that?
I eat just as much.
Yeah.
Especially because I'm trying to cycle like 6 days a week. So that one day, I view that as I finally have a day to catch up. Or if I have 2 days, like I can now catch up. Cycling Tips just did a really great article about looking at caloric intake of like World Tour riders.
Yes, yeah, it was the Mitchelton Scott team. I believe that's their name still.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's their sponsors. Yeah, it's great.
It was 50.
Let's definitely link to that.
Yeah, so on average, like during the day, it was showing that how much these people eat on race days, and it was about 50 grams of carbs per hour if like normalized to all 24 hours.
Yeah.
On the rest days, it was 25, but still at the end of the like the stage race that they were doing, they were calorically down. And on the top, this is good information, is like at the top days, they'd be eating up to like 10 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight. And that's exactly what in the endurance diet, like 8 to 10 being the max.
Yep.
And then their protein intake was also very high. But if you read that article, they thought that, well, maybe you need a whole bunch more protein than what normally is suggested by nutritionists. But doing this myself, and if you just look at what you eat, if you're eating that many total calories through carbohydrate,
it's hard not to get that.
You naturally get way more protein unless you just eat fruit the whole time. And that
unless you make an attempt to avoid protein, really.
Right.
And even that, it's hard because even like rice has protein in it. So you're going to get a lot. But if you're losing weight, it doesn't sound like weight's an issue. So we're not going to say you're gaining weight because people think I'm going to gain all this weight on this one day.
Totally.
Think about it. I'm going to get a little bit ahead of my glycogen replenishment for this next block of training. This is the time to rest. It's like on the weekend you sleep more because you don't have to get up as early and you've been sleep deprived the whole time during work.
Yeah.
That's a bad thing to happen.
For sure.
But you would never think of, I need to sleep less now on the weekend because I'm doing less for some reason, right?
Right.
You want to catch up.
Good point.
That's a good analogy, yeah.
And if you're hungry, you should be eating. If you're not hungry, to Chad's point, you don't.
Don't force yourself to eat. Your body is pretty good at giving you signs of what it needs.
Yep.
Yeah. The other, so I've seen pro athletes do, so I guess first of all, it's very hard to finish a ride or a workout or a race.
In caloric balance.
Yeah. It's just really hard to do it. You can put a ton in beforehand, but then you just burn so much when you're on the bike. Mm-hmm. It's really difficult. Then when I talk about pro eaters, like the pro riders being pro eaters, I really mean it. They don't eat a ton before their rides. They just consistently eat enough, like we're talking about. But then when they're on the bike, it is amazing how, like, anytime you go to look at them or chat with them, they're putting food in their mouth, right? Yeah. They're constantly fueling. And then afterward, they also don't just binge like crazy, because that's another hard thing. If you do like a 3,000 kilojoule ride, it's going to be really tough for you to eat enough after that ride to get back into
uncomfortable. So if you're not eating on the bike close to that 100 grams per hour, you cannot refuel enough in the amount of time you're awake and then all the other things that happen after a race.
This is an example of managing that deficit over the course of the workout of the ride.
Yep.
So I mean, you do your best to stay on top of it, so that when it's over, you don't have as much makeup to do. You don't have to catch up.
I think this problem too happens with people over a season, as they like in the base phase, they might eat a little bit more, but then they try to trim it down in race phase, and they just get lower and lower and lower, and they have a bad performance, and they're like,
it's the opposite of balance.
Yeah, why does this happen?
Yeah.
The other thing, I told you you're going to hear a lot about it, but Cape Epic, it's only 2 years away. But that,
mention number two.
Only two.
Already.
No, but just it's a good example. I'm thinking about this with Sophia. Is we're going to have to. It's 8 days, and I believe there's the prologue is short, but after that, it's like 4 to 6 hours a day. A day, right, of mountain biking. So mountain biking, you take the kilojoules and you add extra because of the movement.
Yeah.
And then there's transfers between stages. Like, how are you going to be able to eat enough and the food that you want?
Yeah.
I know. So it's you got to come in topped up, like with glycogen, and then just eat, and even on just rest days. And we don't have a rest day on this, but you just have to. If you're hungry, eat your carbs.
Yeah.
Unless you are trying to lose weight. It's different.
That's something I wanted to touch on. When we talk about this simple math approach to it, that basically means your body's going to stay the same to pretty high extent.
Right.
You know, the composition might shift a little bit, but really, I mean, if you're taking in as many calories as you're burning and you have a pretty close measure of how many you're burning, then you're going to stay the same. So if weight loss is a concern, then it's even then it's not as simple as just looking at 500 less a day, because the intensity of your workout is going to be selective in terms of what fuel it burns. So maybe you're working hard and you just burned 1,400 calories, but you did it over 3 hours of moderate riding. That's a whole lot of fat metabolism. You put 1,400 calories of carbohydrate back in the system, or even in terms of weight loss, maybe you only put 900 back in. That it doesn't translate just perfectly. We have to differentiate between the intensity and what substrate is actually being burned, fat versus carbohydrate. It's never so neat and tidy as I burn 1,000 calories, I need to take in 1,000 calories to be in balance.
If only. It'd be wonderful if we could measure that.
Especially if fat loss is a concern at all. I mean, it gets tricky. So it's not just straight math.
One thing I wanted to differentiate on is the difference between doing a really hard weekend day or a really big day, regardless of the timing. So you do like a 2,000-3,000 kilojoule ride, big ride, and then the next day you will feel hungry and you need to fuel your body to be able to recover from that. Mm-hmm. Now, if we're looking at you're carrying a training load that's very moderate, it's not very tough, but you have a day where you have pet instead of something that's really tough. In that case, you might not have to concern yourself with just loading up on a bunch of fuel. Also, hopefully you don't have something really tough coming up the day after. But if it's just like our training plans follow in many cases where it's just an easier day, you don't need to worry as much about taking in a ton of fuel on your rest day still as well. And chances are you won't feel quite as hungry. If you do feel hungry, it's probably because you need it.
And there's something I was going to touch on, but this next question actually leads into it real well.
I want to just say, so I've had a big gain even on those easy days, eating a bunch because the previous day was hard and I'm recovering from that still. Yeah. And then the next day is going to be hard.
And I guess what I'm getting at is if they aren't hard, like if your training load isn't really tough for you at that time and then you don't have hard workouts surrounding
you have 3 days in between your workouts, you're in low volume.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But if you go hard and then you got an easier day and then you got a hard day, think about that easy day that's your refueling day. Like you're at the gas station, you're filling up. It's not your day to restrict, because then your Thursday gets to be so hard. And then suddenly the weekend, you're like, oh, what happened?
It's a downhill slide.
All the power's gone.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
One more thing to say on this, sorry.
Yeah.
But someone just posted in the forum, they're like, I switched the endurance diet and now all my motivation's gone and my power is going down. And this person put like a list of what they ate for breakfast and stuff, and I typed out the calories for breakfast. And they used to do 2 eggs, 2 ounces of nuts, and bacon for breakfast, and something else. And that was like at least, fat too. It's 2 ounces of nuts. That's like 365, 380 calories right there, mostly fat. And then you cook your eggs. One thing that people don't understand is you like whatever you cook your eggs into, you have to add that to.
Yeah.
But so basically, they were eating around 700 to 800 calories for breakfast at a minimum. I think maybe more like 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
With the new way, he was eating like oatmeal, and oatmeal you have to eat a whole bunch of oatmeal volume-wise to get a lot of calories.
Dense.
Yep.
Some raw veggies, some yogurt.
Not very calorie dense.
Yep, and then some fruit. And if I did it was almost like a 2-to-1 ratio of calories. So if you do switch to, if you're eating on these days and you're hungry and you're doing like endurance diet, whole grains, fruit, vegetables, you have to understand the volume of food is going to be a lot higher than if you're eating bacon, eggs, and nuts before, or hamburgers or French fries, anything that's
calorically dense.
Calorically dense, right? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
A piece of cheesecake could be like 400 or 500 calories. Eat 400 or 500 calories of oatmeal. Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's so hard.
Or rice.
Or rice, right? 400 or 500 calories of rice is so much.
Yeah, it's really, really, really tough to, if you want to balance that equation out, like you said, and you're doing it with proper, good food, it's really tough to hit that. One stop at a drive-through and you'll have it all knocked out, but it will not be the right type of fuel.
Yeah.
So. Peter says, hey guys, big fan of the podcast and app. I've benefited greatly from the guided training and learned an amazing amount of helpful information through the training combined with the podcast. Keep up the great work. Thanks, Peter. My questions, one you've touched on, but I'd like some more specifics if you're up for it, and I think it would be helpful for everyone to hear. What's the relationship or correct balance between tapering, trying to stay at race weight, but also carb loading? For my Olympic distance triathlon, I've worked to get down to 65 kilograms and stay there for race day. During base and build, this was relatively straightforward, but when I got to my taper, my final stretch of training, albeit lighter than usual, I felt like I'm getting conflicting advice. On the one hand, I'm hearing that it's important to eat and hydrate well during the taper, and in the final few days to do some carb loading too. But in practice, that meant putting on over an extra kilogram of weight that I'd worked hard to lose and keep off until that point, and arriving at race day weighing more than my targeted race weight. So what advice have you got on this? Should I have eaten less, or is it better to arrive weighing a bit more and be loaded up with glycogen and fluids? Thanks in advance. So this is a good dovetail from that one. Mm-hmm. We see a bunch of, so in my personal opinion, especially when you get to tapering, you hear that saying "hay's in the barn," and in a lot of ways it is there. And I'm just concerned with performance. Like my body makeup is what it is. Yeah. Performance should be the primary concern, right, Chad?
Yeah. And when it comes to glycogen, it's a bummer, but it packs weight. It's just all there is to it. For every gram of glycogen, you got 3 to 4 of water.
2 grams.
3 to 4.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
It's contentious, but it's in a tight range. So let's just say 3. But either way, it adds water, and water adds weight, but water also adds hydration. I mean, there are benefits to it. So you have to look at it from a performance perspective, and an extra pound of glycogen versus being a pound lighter and glycogen depleted. You tell me. I mean, especially if it's a multi-hour race. Oh yeah, it's just going to go downhill quickly. And I remember when we were having some weight loss competition with DEXA scans and whatnot, and man, did I overdo the fasted meals or the fasted workouts, because I would have I do a hard workout at night, do a protein-based dinner, get up and do a light workout, and the weight was just coming off. Weight, mind you, being the key term. Because I lost some fat, but I lost a lot of glycogen. So every day when I was a pound lighter, it's like, holy hell, I just lost a pound. That'll all come back as soon as I eat something that has sugar in it. Yeah. But in the course of doing this, I just got weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker.
So you're not just losing fat,
so my performance was tanking. Yeah. So, I looked a little better, didn't feel any better, and I couldn't perform for to save my life. I was doing horribly. Yeah. So while it is tempting to just watch the scale and see the weight come off, and it is easy to ditch weight by avoiding carbohydrate and not replenishing your glycogen, it's not performance enhancing. It's not going to make you a better racer. It's not going to make you train better. It's only going to come at the harm to all those things.
I feel like this is a great way to ruin your A race.
Yes.
It's someone on race week. They're getting on the scale every morning.
Oh,
yeah.
And
Just
they're
steer
looking
clear.
at it. And they're hungry, but they're not eating because they're like, this is tapering.
Yes.
So if
Maybe
you're hungry,
just-
eat.
Yes.
Maybe just push that scale back under the counter.
I never
or
race
whatever.
myself on race day. Do you?
On race day, heck
never.
no. Race
No.
week,
It
not
just
even
messes
race
with your
week.
mind.
Oh yeah, and I've actually taken to doing the same thing that Pete actually does. Is he has tape over the screen of his scale, and I have tape over the screen of my scale, but then it syncs to an app. So then I can look at it if I want later on
You
in
look
the
at it
app,
past the point.
which I usually end up doing. But as I get closer to nationals, I am not going to be looking at that. I still log it, so I have the data, but I'm not going to be looking at that
Yeah,
because
just try not to be weight conscious on race day.
Yes.
And that's really easily done. Just
Yep.
don't weigh yourself.
I don't
Or
know
if
what
you
you're
do, don't
thinking.
look at it.
You're like, it just comes down to power to weight. I have to be concerned with it, but you really don't because you've made your body what it is to that point. You're not going to make any sort of gains by saving a bit of weight.
Even
and
those
then
Grand
missing
Tour
out.
climbers who have the most favorable or most impressive strength to weight ratios in the world are eating enough
yeah.
on race day. Probably eating a ton.
yeah.
Well, we just saw,
in
yes.
the case of a Grand Tour. Yeah, well,
7
yes.
to 10,000 calories
Exactly.
a day.
And
Yes.
that goes for the light guys too.
Yeah.
Little guys, I mean, it's relative to their body weight. They're eating a ton.
Yes. Final question, or do you have something else to add?
Yeah. So I understand too. This is for Leadville. You go to a race. There's a lot of climbing. You say how much should I load with glycogen?
Yeah.
So because I've looked at this a lot, and even in shorter events, supposedly it reduces RPE. So even if you're doing a 20-minute thing and
Yeah.
you're not thinking you're gonna burn through your glycogen, which you're not going to.
Like you're not going to get close to the bonk.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. And I think that you should be doing glycogen loading. The one that I think is questionable is salt loading. I would only do salt loading in a hot environment where I know I'm not going to be able to replenish.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of Ironmans out there where it's not hot, it's long, but you're going to have plenty of fluid intake.
Yeah.
Kona, you probably will be dehydrated. Leadville, I thought I was going to get dehydrated,
Yeah.
and I did. But that's where I would do the cutoff. Carson City off-road, mountain bike racing. It can be really hard to be able to take in enough water with the amount of
Yes.
bottles you have in aid stations. That is the one where it's questionable about, do I want to add an extra 2 pounds of water? I don't need that for a 20-minute race or maybe even a 2-hour
Right.
mountain bike race. But
Yeah.
the glycogen, it's like, should I have more rocket fuel in my legs? Like, I don't know.
No more rocket fuel,
Yeah.
right? Like when we just
Exactly.
say that.
Yeah, I don't want to go fast.
Last question from Mark, and then if you're with us live, we're going to take a handful of the questions that you submitted live on Facebook and YouTube. And we usually do that, by the way, on Thursdays at 8 a.m. Pacific. In this case, we're on a Tuesday. So Mark says, hey, guys, he says, it's not my name, but for the sake of the podcast continually, can you call me Jens? So the reason that he's saying that is because I think, man, this is really early on in the podcast, but we had like 3 different people that were all different people, but they submitted questions and their names were Jens, and we picked them. And they were just good questions. But anyways, so he says, 5 enthusiastic stars. I have a fairly specific question, but I think a lot of people could learn from the discussion. I'm 6'3", 240 pounds. Ian, or one of you guys run through the numbers on that so then we can get folks some information. Sorry, I didn't put that in earlier. He says the Tanita scale says I'm 12% body fat. I'm 46 years old, a former fighter turned back of the pack triathlete and cyclist. And he says Nate doesn't get to claim he's big until he's over 220, he says. So he says, do you have the size on him?
Yeah, he's 190 centimeters and 109 kilograms.
So big fella. And he says that you don't get to claim you're big until you're over 220 pounds. So
Well, it's height.
that's true. He says, my A race this year is and he says in quotes, friendly 2-day Grand Fondo style charity ride from Seattle to Vancouver. Most of the time the group ride hangs together, but there are 4 major hills on the first day. Last year I got dropped like a freshman philosophy class on 3 of them. And he says, and even though we were all together going into the final 10-mile section, 8 hills of about 150 to 400 feet each. So he's looking at, anywhere from 70 up to I guess 150 meters, somewhere around there. I was 10 minutes off the back by the end of those climbs. The group is all younger, smaller, and more experienced than I am. One of the primary reasons to ride with them, he says. He says, I have 15 years and at least 20 kilograms on the next closest guy. And this year, my son-in-law will likely be joining us. He's 5'6", 145 pounds. He's a runner who does marathons on 48 hours notice. He says, even if I can't beat the rest of the group, I must crush him.
I must crush him.
So with TrainerRoad, I've managed to crank my FTP from last year's 240 to 305. Nice job. And I've just started another build block. In about 4 weeks, I'll be ordering some Flow 60 disc wheels. It means disc brakes, I assume. Upgraded my bottom bracket and gone to paraffin lube. He's done all the things. So my question is, what else can I do? Chad and Nate, how would you crush Jonathan on a ride like this?
First off, I'd look at the perspective of the son-in-law looking at the dad.
Yeah,
I'd just give it to him. It's yours, brother.
Can you imagine having
It's a
your
big
father-in-law
dude with a
be
fighting
that
background.
gigantic guy and he's an ex-fighter? That's terrifying. I would not have married into that family. Yeah, that would have been
I'll
scary.
just ride his wheel the whole time. So
Yeah.
you're doing great, buddy.
You're doing great. Pushing, do whatever else. Yeah. So how would you guys, if this was us, we were doing this sort of ride, how would you drop me, beat me?
I would not give your son a TrainerRoad subscription. No, but okay. So this race, if it's the same one, you're saying there's 4 hills and everything else is together.
Yeah.
So really, it's just power to weight on the climb, and everything else is a group ride.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like if it was a race and I was going against you and there were long climbs.
Yeah.
I don't want to get a breakaway. I don't want to get time on you.
You'd want to get ahead of me before the climb.
Exactly. Yep. Which would be hard to do, but that would be the way to do it if I know the climb was going to be long enough where I was going to get dropped.
Where would you look to leverage your larger size or power? Like, where would you look to gap me?
Yeah, crosswinds or a tailwind. Crosswinds
And
being the
downhills.
best. Just did
downhills too. Good one. Yeah.
What, downhills?
Downhills.
Downhills are a little
Assuming
bit.
you're a competent descender, and I mean, safety's going to trump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like on downhills you get a little bit of it's like softens the legs, but you usually don't get a big gap like you would in crosswind
Yeah.
stuff. You can get like 10, 15 seconds.
I
The
agree
group
with
will
that.
usually come back with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if he has a group, if you spin him off solo, it's really hard for us smaller riders to be able to.
But if he gets a small gap on a downhill and just settles into a tuck, he'll have to work to get back on his wheel.
We have to work so hard to catch you bigger riders on,
soften
on
legs.
descents.
But in this race, probably not going to happen.
Probably not.
I just did the road race. There's a crosswind section, and I pushed it on purpose with a group of like 5. We're off the front hard, and we gapped Ben Reagan's, which is he's a really good climber and actually outclimbed me, and he couldn't get back on because we kept pushing.
Yeah.
So if there's a crosswind with your is it
Son-in-law?
Yeah, totally push it on that crosswind, especially at 145 pounds.
Yes.
And then when you do that, if there's a center line rule or whatever it is, make sure you get all the way over.
Gutter him.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what's called a guttering. And maybe in this race, not actually right in the gutter, since it's a charity Grand Fondo, and there's maybe not everyone.
Quite so cutthroat.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember, he must crush him. That's an important detail.
But be aware too that you're going to give a really good draft at that weight and height.
That's a good point.
Anything else, if you think you're pushing into a headwind or no wind, and your son-in-law's behind you, he's getting such a great free ride that you might think that you're hurting him, but you're not.
Yeah, and you can
Yes.
try to burn him up too. I mean, in those crosswinds or headwinds, put him in front, ride his wheel for a while. It might not be the best draft, but he's doing more work than you are.
Motivate him to pull a lot.
Yes.
So that's another thing. The mind game's like, go up there. Come on,
Absolutely.
let's get going.
You've got this.
You're 15 years, 20 years
Exactly.
younger, 30 years younger than me. You should go do it.
Yeah, the least favorite thing that I like is when we're riding in a race, we have climbs coming up, and if you just make it hard before the climbs, it's just so tough because then the relative advantage I have, you've just brought it down. It's a really tough thing.
But it could be hard for the big guys too.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
make sure you don't. You and our road race that we just did, there was this is a little aside, but Pete Morris talks about this. Beginning of the race, it was a really big headwind, 30 miles per hour.
Jeez.
And I didn't want to pull at the front. So another thing to do is you hide the whole race you can. And this was in a race. This was in a group ride. People were peeling off the front and like flipping their elbow.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't pull through. And these college kids, podcast listeners, sorry guys, but they were losing their minds. I could see in the shadow, they were actually doing hand gestures to me and yelling at me, "Why aren't you pulling through?" There's no one up the road.
It's like they were driving the pace for no reason.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was like a group ride. This is a race, people.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to do that. And then they got frustrated and they actually attacked into the headwind. And right before turnaround, where it was going to be a tailwind, and then we caught them right before the climb.
Yeah.
So to your point, like if you do push it, we caught them before the climb, and then we dropped them.
Yes.
But there's no reason, Mark, if you're racing this, that you ever have to pull. And if you do pull, you can do like fake pulls.
Yeah.
The winner of the race, also Justin Thomas, he didn't pull either in these things, but no one yelled at him.
If you're going to pull, make it meaningful. Make it impactful for somebody else
for the
or
race.
for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So if you're going to pull, if it's a crosswind to hurt them, I mean, in a group ride, you just pull because it's fun for everyone to do
Sure.
it. But in a race, there's like it's okay to go slow at sometimes.
Yeah.
In order for you to save energy. So if everyone else, if he's pulling through, your son-in-law, but you're sitting on the back the whole time, you could totally do that.
Oh, yeah.
You totally do that. There's nothing, it's not like illegal to not pull.
The other thing that I would say too is on rough pavement or like a rough surface, or if there's gravel involved for sure, anything that increases like the amount of power that you need to put out, that just takes the same amount out of everybody. So when you have a higher threshold because you're a bigger athlete, it's going to have less relative impact on you, relative
I mean,
to
you're
that force.
effectively racing him, so just make him work and beat him up.
Okay, here's some other things you should do. You should buy him jerseys that are a little bit too big. So before,
yes,
this is getting pretty bad.
Get like buy like a Rafa or an Ossos one, like a really nice one.
Get
so
the
it's like
event
a
one
good
in
gift.
XXL.
Yeah, but club fit and
Yes,
if he's 145, get him like a large.
Yeah,
Right?
there you
So
go.
it's flappy.
Yeah.
Same, get him a little hat that has the visor.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
cyclists should not be wearing these in races because they're
Yes.
just like a little snowplow for the wind. But be like, yeah, you look good in that.
Yeah.
Helmets that are, I would get a big airy helmet that's
Tell
not arrow.
them to get gator skins.
Yeah, be like,
Gator skin tires.
buy some tires.
Fastest tires out there.
And sometimes, like earlier on before, as you're younger, you don't have as much money. So, new tires. Like, yeah, you're not getting flat with these Gator skins. That can add 20 watts, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
It's great.
And then the jersey can be another 20 watts.
Oh, yeah.
You take 40 watts out of them right there.
Get him a new chain, but don't take off the factory grease.
Oh yeah, good looking. I think one of the worst. Look at the friction facts for the chain lube.
Yeah.
There are some really bad ones.
Yeah.
At the bottom. This is so
throw
bad. So buy him. Look at that and buy him the worst chain lube possible.
Yes.
Because you're waxing your chain or you're using whatever paraffin lube.
Yeah.
Get the worst wax possible.
Yeah.
You can make the disc. You make the brakes rub a little bit.
Exactly.
That's a little bit
Tune
too
that.
far,
You
maybe.
get downright
Yeah.
shady if
Yeah,
you want
exactly.
Yeah, don't tell him to shave his legs.
Show him pictures of Fabian Cancellara, always holding onto the hoods, and say that if you get out of the hoods, you're not fast. So you just have to stay up there the whole time.
Right, tall.
Yeah,
Right,
just try
tall.
to find one where his elbows weren't bent, making himself arrow. So, anything else?
Other than that, I mean, you're going to
that's
sag climb the climb also. But in order to crush him on these climbs, I guess that's when people get dropped. You're going to need to have a higher power to weight ratio. So when you look at the TINA scale too, and you're 12%, or is that in athlete mode? I bet that's in athlete mode.
Yeah.
So if it's in athlete mode, in regular person mode, you're probably
24-ish,
maybe 20, somewhere in there.
somewhere around there.
But that means there's fat to lose, and that was
fat
the
to
other.
lose.
Yeah, you could lose the weight because if you lost 20 pounds at a FTP of 300,
Yes.
that's big
Yep.
improvement.
Yeah, to recap, in my mind, if it's not on a grade, if it's like you're not climbing up something in situations where more power is required, once again, and not on a climb, if you make it hard, then it's going to be extra hard for us little guys.
And another thing for us bigger riders, so this is specifically going against Jonathan. To beat Jonathan in a race, I would do it at points where I think at our power profiles, I think my only advantage over him would be a flat race where it's a minute, maybe power, and I can get a gap. If there's no gap, then he's going to get on me. And he has enough acceleration that it needs to have like a slingshot effect. So if I was going to try to beat Jonathan, it would be something where it's an all-out effort or a bridge to a breakaway. Because if you can get to a breakaway and they work and Jonathan has no one to help him, that's also very hard to bridge.
Yeah.
Would be that. But if I were to attack in front of you, so if you're going to attack your son-in-law, it's got to be you start from the back and you come by.
That's your friendly grandfather.
30.
You must crush him.
Well, you could get a team to do a
Sure.
breakaway.
Totally.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's some crosswinds.
It'll
You
work.
guys go really hard and you drop that son-in-law like a bad habit.
Yeah, that's
like
it.
a freshman, whatever, philosophy class.
Yeah,
That's
that was
awesome.
good. All right. Well, thanks everybody for submitting those questions. Once again, trainerroad.com/podcast. We're just going to take a few questions that we've submitted or that you have submitted on Facebook and YouTube just out of interest of time this week. So once again, thanks for doing that. And next week, I believe we'll be back at the normal time. You folks will be in town, you gentlemen. So we should be able to do that. He's already got some good ones.
Sean says, I just looked at the calendar. It's only 2 years till Cape Epic 2021.
Nice. Good to know. All right. So somebody said, how do we improve our flexibility on the bike without yoga? Any recommended exercises? We happen to have a YouTube video for that, so you can check that out. I would recommend.
What's it called? TrainerRoad stretching?
It's stretches. I think it's 5 stretches for cyclists, I believe is the title. I could be wrong, but I believe that's what it is. If you look on our YouTube channel and search stretching, you'll be able to find it.
Sean says, we have a huge sauna. It's called Florida.
Yes, exactly right.
Funny today.
Huge muggy flow.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, somebody says training on rollers at a high speed and cadence versus a fluid trainer at lower speed cadence. And then he says for this example, same heart rate, and he says same, right, and kind of tries to normalize things. Benefits of each, which is better. Really, there's, I think this is a bit of barking up the wrong tree, in my opinion, Caleb, in the sense that there's really, you shouldn't be concerned in the benefits one versus the other in this case. If you're training on rollers, you get some benefit in the terms of balance stuff, but trust me, that doesn't really translate out onto the road. It's just a totally unique experience from riding on the road. So really, you're really just talking about riding at high versus low cadence.
And inertia.
Yeah,
so
and inertia.
Practicing the differences in inertia can benefit you when it comes to riding outdoors.
Make it specific. And we always recommend that people familiarize themselves with a wide range of cadence. You can tune into the previous 2 episodes, I believe 200 and 199 perhaps, where we discuss that very thing. So
Ryan has a question. Nate, as a tall person, have you found a good air bar extension which accommodate your long arms? And I have. If you buy the Envy ones are made to be cut. So they are extremely long, and there's like different spots to cut to get different kind of angles for elevation rise. And what you could do is just not cut them as much.
Sure.
And they're totally long enough for your arms.
Did you cut yours at all?
Yep.
Yeah.
It depends on the aero bars, but I believe on some of them, like Profile Design, I don't cut them at all. But then other ones, like the new Tri-Rig Alpha X or 1 that I have, I did have to cut them a little bit.
It's a pretty sweet setup, too long. By the way, your bike is much more aero.
It is. Yeah. Looks pretty slick.
Let's see. Somebody says, okay, Eli says with disc wheels, and I assume he's talking about disc brakes. Is there any advantage is the advantage that you wear out the easy to replace disc over the rim braking surface wearing out? So I assume that you're talking about one lasting over the other. Yes, but chances are on a road bike, you're not going to wear out your rotors unless you let your pads wear down. You change your pads out really regularly, and your rotors are probably going to be fine for a very long time.
And even if you did have to replace rotors, they're not that expensive.
Really, I mean, they're getting more now. Thanks, roadies, for making a big deal about rounded edge rotors, because that now bumped them way up in price. But so they're getting a little. They're like, I think they're around $70 a rotor. So they've gone up there
per
now.
Rotor.
Yes.
Oh, okay, they're getting up there.
Unfortunately, but pads are pretty cheap to replace, and you can go through that. But if you ran out the braking surface on a pair of wheels on like rim brake wheels,
It can be extremely costly.
your wheels are probably very much ready to be replaced anyway. They probably don't hold true anymore. They're probably pretty fatigued. So I'm just going to pick one more. Nate, if you have one. We answered this guy's question about how to make his group ride harder. Hopefully that counts that one. And we're going to end on this one. Somebody says, does Jonathan's win count as a Beat Pete race?
Heck yes.
Oh, yeah.
It does.
It does. We've done it twice now.
It's out and out.
It's true.
Beating of Pete.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for joining us on the live stream. Sorry we didn't get to more of those questions. We'll save more time for that next week. Please join us there and join us on the forum, forum.trainerroad.com. If you're curious about anything we're doing here at TrainerRoad, we have a lot of exciting stuff coming out right now. You can check it out. Go to trainerroad.com. We'd really appreciate that. And if you use TrainerRoad or listen to this podcast, tell your friends. We'll talk to you all next week. See ya.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.